Rickie Collins, welcome to Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. A little birdie told me that Syracuse football got itself a quarterback in the transfer portal. That's right, Rickie Collins from LSU, according to Syracuse.com's Brent Axe. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, LSU quarterback Rickie Collins is transferring to the Syracuse Orange. Folks, the Orange needed a quarterback. It appears like they have got it with Rickie Collins. On today's show, I'm going to give you guys a bio, a scouting report, the pros and cons of Rickie Collins to the Orange. I'm also going to give you guys an overview of the 2025 quarterback room. And then, coming up later on in the podcast, folks, the Orange were linked to 4 quarterbacks by my count in the transfer portal. Was Rickie Collins truly the best decision? Well, of course, time is going to tell, but of course, we can also talk about it on December 18th. All that and more here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoff. The College Football Playoff is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. All right, we got a quarterback. I think. Rickie Collins from LSU. What do you need to know about him? Well, you've come to the right place. He is a former 4-star high school recruit at LSU not too long ago. We're talking about 2023 recruiting cycle. So he has spent 2 seasons in college football, but he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining still because one of those years was a redshirt year. Collins is 6'2", 205 pounds, so that's pretty good size for a quarterback, especially for someone that's pretty mobile. He doesn't have a lot of passing attempts in college football. I'll get to that in a moment. So from his high school scouting report on 24/7 Sports, I'll paraphrase it for you right now. This is someone who's got good athleticism, above average mobility, but what can get Rickie Collins in trouble is his footwork, which could lead to inaccurate passes. So this is someone who's going to need to be coached up by this Syracuse staff. My thoughts, okay? Rickie Collins has thrown 7 passes in college football. 7. Now, funny enough, he's 7 for 7, so he has never thrown an incomplete pass. Now, I imagine he's going to throw an incomplete pass at Syracuse, but that's okay. Even Kyle McCord last year, over 30% of the time, he threw an incompletion. It happens. Every quarterback throws incompletions. I just found that funny. He went 7 for 7. This is honestly a move that, I'll be honest, we're going to have to rely on the staff. And we're going to have to trust the staff that they know what they're doing with Rickie Collins. I'll start with the pros, okay? The number one pro of Rickie Collins is that he does have upside. There's got to be untapped potential there. You don't become a 4-star recruit that's good enough to play at LSU by accident. Clearly, there's something there. So maybe with the right coaching, he could live up to his potential. And this is not a 4-star recruit from 2020 or 2021, which is a long time ago, and you're asking someone to finally live up to their potential. No, this is from 2023. So it's not too long. The other pro is this. He's got 3 years of college eligibility remaining. One of the very first things that we discussed this offseason was what type of quarterback do we want in the portal? What type of, do we want a one-year rental or a multi-year guy? All things considered, all things being equal. Now, obviously, you'd prefer the better talent over everything, but if you had to choose, talent being the same, you would rather a multi-year transfer, because if you get the multi-year transfer and it, in theory, works out for you, then in theory, you don't have to, if Rickie Collins succeeds at Syracuse, if he succeeds and he stays for all 3 years, we're not worrying about quarterback until the 2028 offseason, because he would play in 2025, he would play in 2026, he would play in 2027, which means the 2028 offseason is when we're next going to have to worry about a quarterback if Rickie Collins pans out and if he decides to stay all 3 years. But those are two big ifs. And that leads into the cons of Rickie Collins. He does have upside. Yes, that's a big pro. But we have no idea if he's actually good or not. And this is where we got to trust the staff. We have no clue. There's no way to really know. You don't know until a guy is thrown into the fire, or if Rickie Collins is fighting for the quarterback one job and doesn't earn it in camp. That's another way to know. But assuming he gets on the field, that's when you'll truly know about Rickie Collins. So what I have written in my notes is we're not going to know if the guy's good or not until potentially August 30th, which is the season opener against Tennessee in Atlanta. We got no clue. It's not like Kyle McCord, where Kyle McCord, for all of his quote-unquote failures or whatever you want to call it at Ohio State, you still knew that he was going to be pretty good. Or at least I did. And many of you guys suspected the same thing, that McCord would probably have a pretty good year at Syracuse. Maybe not what we predicted in terms of how good he actually was. But the point is that McCord had pedigree. You knew. You had an idea. He was a starter at Ohio State the entire year. Rickie Collins, no, not a starter at LSU. There's not a problem with not being a starter at LSU because obviously it's one of the top programs and they have a top quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. And he's coming back another year, so there was no way for Rickie Collins to get on the field. The concern that I have, which is why I say, do we really know if he's good or not, is he didn't earn the backup job there. He lost out to Vanderbilt transfer A.J. Swann late in the season. I kind of find that strange. To me, that's a red flag. Really? Second college season and you can't be the backup? I understand not being in the starter. I get it. But not being the backup, I don't know. I hope there's upside there. There should be. It wasn't too long ago when he was a 4-star recruit. But is he actually good? That's a big question. Number two, again, it feeds in line with the pro of having 3 years of college eligibility. Just because he's got multiple years of eligibility does not mean he is going to stay for multiple years. The example that I give is Maalik Murphy. Maalik Murphy was a top quarterback prospect at Texas, had no path to playing time, none. He couldn't play. They had Quinn Ewers coming back another year. They recruited Arch Manning in high school. Maalik Murphy, sorry, man, you're not playing at Texas. So what does he do last offseason? He transfers to Duke, where he gets an opportunity to be the day one starter. And guess what? He did really well. And Duke went 9-3 this season. One of the better teams in the ACC. Now, why do I bring up Maalik Murphy? Well, he had multiple years when he transferred to Duke, but guess what? He re-entered the portal this offseason. Oh. Now, I'm not saying that if Rickie Collins bursts onto the scene next year for Syracuse that he wouldn't come back. In fact, it's impossible to know if he would come back or not, but you would hope he would. What I'm trying to point out is that it's not a guarantee. That just because a guy has multiple years does not mean that he's going to stay for multiple years. This is the transfer portal. This is the wild, wild west out here. So overall, when you weigh the pros and cons and you look at the scouting report of him, we're going to have to trust the coaching staff on this. Is Rickie Collins really the answer for Syracuse football? I think after year one, this coaching staff deserves the benefit of the doubt. It was a brand new staff that came together. And they went 9-3, exceeding my expectations. Maybe exceeding your expectations. But I'm not going to necessarily walk back what I said about Rickie Collins a couple weeks ago now that he's actually committed to Syracuse. This is my honest opinion. It was not, I guess I'll spoil a little bit of the podcast later on here, but this was not my number one choice in the portal. Do I trust the staff? I do. And guess what? Whether I'm right or wrong about this move has no bearing on what actually happens. So we'll see. We'll see. I trust the staff. Hopefully they get it right with Rickie Collins. Once again, this is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. And according to Brent Axe at Syracuse.com, the Orange have landed Rickie Collins from LSU in the transfer portal. The Orange appear to have their quarterback in 2025. Oh, wait. Do they actually have their quarterback in 2025? Because coming up, we are going to talk about the quarterback room next season. Is he even a lock to start? That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Syracuse football is supposed to play in the Holiday Bowl against Washington State on December 27th. And if you listen to Cuse Sports Talk this afternoon, apparently it's full steam ahead. Despite all the opt-outs for Washington State and even their coaches leaving, they're still supposed to play in the Holiday Bowl. FanDuel has recognized that. I believe the line started out as 6.5, but now the Orange are 13.5-point favorites. What do you think of those odds? Well, you can be the judge for yourself at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, folks, let's talk about the quarterback room in 2025 for Syracuse football. Now that Rickie Collins is transferring from LSU to the Orange, according to Syracuse.com's Brent Axe. I'm going to start off this segment by saying this. I do not think that Rickie Collins is a lock to start at Syracuse. I do not. He's got extremely limited playing time, and while, he was once a former top prospect, there's no guarantee that he's ever going to live up to that. So I don't think he's a lock necessarily, okay? Like I said with Kyle McCord came here with a ton of pedigree last season. He was a lock to start. You knew he was starting. There was no competition. Rickie Collins, I think we have ourselves a quarterback battle, okay? So let's examine the quarterback room. For the sake of argument, though, having said everything just now, a disclaimer, for the sake of argument, Rickie Collins is the starting quarterback next year. But the player that has the best chance of winning the job outside of Rickie Collins is likely Jakhari Williams. Jakhari Williams was a 3-star recruit in the 2024 recruiting cycle, but I want you to keep in mind this. Jakhari Williams was recruited by who? Just think for a moment. Who was he recruited by? I know he eventually signed with Syracuse in December of 2024 with Fran Brown. I know that. But who is he really recruited by? That's Dino Babers, the former Syracuse football head coach for 8 years. Why do I mention that? Honestly, we don't really know how this staff feels about Jakhari Williams because he's not one of their guys. He was in their first signing class, but he committed to Syracuse long before he committed to Syracuse when Dino Babers was still the coach. Having said that, I think because of the experience, the fact that he redshirted this season as a true freshman, he's going to have the leg up. So therefore, I think he has the highest likelihood of taking the starting job from Rickie Collins. I think him and Rickie Collins are going to battle it out. And we'll see. Spring ball, spring practice, spring game, fall camp. I really wish there was preseason football games in college. I think that would be really cool. The NFL, not so much. Don't care about preseason in the NFL. But in college, I think it would be very handy. But there is none. So we'll find out in fall camp, and we'll find out week 1 who is actually starting. It's either going to be Rickie Collins or Jakhari Williams in all likelihood. Next up, you got 2 2025 quarterback commits, 2 of them. And as of right now, it's impossible to say who is going to be the quarterback 3 and who's going to be the quarterback 4, or if one of those guys actually has an outside chance of playing games next season. Let's talk about the guy who I think has more hype right now. That's Luke Carney, a 3-star Texas recruit. He's 6'2", 205 pounds. He can throw and he can run. I don't think his scouting report really says that he's a dual threat quarterback, but if you just look at his high school numbers, you know that he can throw and you know that he can run. He put up video game numbers in high school. And when I had on Brian Smith is a Locked On recruiting expert. He dedicates his whole life to football recruiting. He absolutely loves it. He is a guru, one of the best in the business. He called Carney a possible gem. And I'll paraphrase what he said to me about Luke Carney. And that's that if he went to a different school in Texas, he would probably be a much higher rated recruit than he is. I said he's a 3-star because that's what he actually is rated. But from what Brian told me and what Brian told you guys on the podcast way back in the summer, Luke Carney could very well be a very good quarterback for a long time. So he certainly got more hype. So I think that's why people by default put him as that next guy. And we'll see what happens. Then you got Rich Belin, the other 2025 quarterback commit. He's 6 foot. He's 190 pounds. He's from New York. And I believe he's more of a dual threat than Carney, according to the scouting reports. With him, don't have too much. I don't have that same insight like I do with Luke Carney. So we'll see with a guy like Rich Belin. I don't think Carney or Belin are going to see the field next season. I think both those guys are going to use next year to redshirt, and then we'll see what happens next offseason. It's really fascinating because Rickie Collins has 3 years of eligibility remaining. If he does well next year as the starter and he comes back, what's going to happen to the other 3 quarterbacks on the roster? I don't know. It's likely that someone would transfer out, but if Rickie Collins is truly the answer, then why should we care, right? So that's the quarterback room. You got Rickie Collins and Jakhari Williams. I think as of right now, on December 18th at 5:17 p.m. Eastern, when I'm recording this, I would say because of the newness that Rickie Collins is probably the favorite to start, but ever so slightly. Right above Jakhari Williams, and then Luke Carney and Rich Belin, the true freshman entering next year. I think they're going to be the quarterback 3 and 4. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Who do you want starting for Syracuse next year? You want Rickie Collins from LSU, who they just got? Or do you want Jakhari Williams, or do you even want a true freshman? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, coming up on the podcast, folks, Syracuse football was looking at 4 potential quarterback options in the transfer portal. So we'll talk about where Collins fits in that group of 4 and whether or not he was the best choice. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and according to Syracuse.com's Brent Axe, Rickie Collins is transferring from LSU to Syracuse. Now, was quarterback Rickie Collins the best choice for Syracuse football in the transfer portal? Leave a comment in the comment section below your thoughts, okay? What I'm going to say right off the bat is that I will walk back one thing I said earlier in the week or a couple weeks ago. Don't exactly remember. It's all foggy because it's the transfer portal. Rickie Collins to me was originally my least favorite of the four. I would take that back. I'll explain where he fell in just a second, but I take that back. He was not my last choice at the end of the day. And I'm not just saying that because he now committed. I was actually thinking this for a while after I said what I said. So there's that. But Rickie Collins was not one of my top two choices. I thought Liberty's Caden Salter would have been terrific for us, a dual threat quarterback. He had some off-field issues, some character concerns, but I was willing to trust the coaching staff that they know more than maybe you and I might know. Regardless, he was a dual threat guy. It would have required a scheme change, but that's what the offseason is for, and you take the best talent if you can. Caden Salter visited Syracuse this past weekend, but today I was going to do a whole mini podcast about it, but I scrapped it because Rickie Collins is committing. But he committed to Colorado, Caden Salter, so they missed out on him. I'm bummed about that. Maybe in the long run, we'll look back on this take and say, man, Jackson, you're an idiot. And I hope I'm right. I hope that Rickie Collins next year is an All-American. Not wishing any ill will on Caden Salter, but I'm just hoping that Rickie Collins ends up succeeding. However, Caden Salter was my number one choice. I can't take that back now that Rickie Collins committed. Rickie Collins was also not my second choice. That would have been Texas A&M's Connor Wigman. He committed to Houston, though. He's a former five-star recruit. He had shown flashes with the Aggies of being a really good quarterback, but then they had a whole coaching change and everything heading into this year, a scheme change. It clearly did not fit Connor Wigman. He was not very good in 2024 in a limited sample, clear regression, but he was the type of guy who was a pro-style quarterback. He could have been a plug-and-play guy, and he's a former five-star recruit. So I think with the proper coaching, he could have been really, really good for Syracuse. And again, I'm hoping to be wrong. I'm hoping that Rickie Collins ends up being the answer for the Orange. Now is where Rickie Collins slots in. He was my third choice out of the four. To me, Rickie Collins is a complete mystery. I cannot tell you for sure if he's good or if he's bad or if he's somewhere in the middle. I can't tell you that. He's thrown 7 passes in his college career. 7. Now, he is 7 for 7, which is cool. But 7, that's it. Having said that, when we talk about the fourth choice coming up, I would rather a mystery. I would rather not know than the guy we're going to talk about right now, which is Anthony Colandrea, who's probably going to Ole Miss. He's probably going to Ole Miss, but Anthony Colandrea was the starting quarterback at Virginia the past 2 seasons. He visited Syracuse, I think last weekend or earlier this week. Not entirely sure. He did visit the Orange, though. The thing with Anthony Colandrea and why I now prefer Rickie Collins is that Colandrea, he is proven, but he's proven to be mediocre at best. His 2023 and 2024, he was the starting quarterback at Virginia, and there was no regression or progression. He was the same guy. He was kind of just mid. Mid is honestly probably putting it a little nicely on Anthony Colandrea. I liked his mobility, but if Syracuse had gotten Calandria instead of Collins, I don't know how I would have spun the podcast. I really don't. I mean, I don't try to spin the podcast. I try to just give you my authentic, honest opinion. But with Calandria, I would even tell you guys, like, there's no upside with him. None. Like, he's just mediocre at best. Sorry. But at least with Collins, while he was not my preference, he wasn't. And I am not sure if he's going to be good or not. He is a mystery. So maybe he is. He's a former 4-star guy at LSU. Maybe with the proper coaching, he could do wonders for Syracuse football. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. I trust the staff, so we'll see what happens. All right? As far as what is coming up on the podcast, I apologize, guys. It's been very hectic, okay? A lot of news has broken recently. So here's what I got planned, okay? And again, plans are subject to change, especially when big news happens like Rickie Collins committing. But tomorrow, 3 things. A mini podcast. Rutgers receiver Chris Long Jr., he committed to Syracuse last night. So I already have that all prepped. Haven't recorded it yet, but I will record it tomorrow. So that'll be up there. That'll go out tomorrow. Also tomorrow, a full podcast on the cornerback room for Syracuse football. Not quarterback, corner. Corner with a C. The reason why we're talking about that is because Jaden Bellamy last afternoon entered the transfer portal. Bellamy could have been a starter for Syracuse next season, but he's in the portal now, and the Orange certainly could use some cornerbacks. So we'll talk about that tomorrow in a full podcast. And also, tomorrow is Thursday. What does that mean? ACC squad. All right. So we got 3 episodes coming out tomorrow. A mini podcast on Chris Long Jr., the Rutgers receiver committing to Syracuse. A full podcast on the cornerbacks after Jaden Bellamy entered the portal. And also ACC squad. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And folks, like I said, those notifications, because it's the transfer portal, it's hectic. So you're going to want to know when I am dropping that next podcast. And everyone, take care.